meetings. I get to see their faces all the time. It's
But
awesome.
see, it's not as awesome as the building and grounds with me and Molly. It's
Okay.
just,
Well.
we're gonna have some fun times on the 4th Thursday of this month. Dr. Moser is so excited about our committee meeting that he is jumping up and down as we speak. See, look at him.
All right, let's see if we've got everyone back yet. Let's
We
see,
do.
have Ms. Bailey, Ms. Krychowiak, Ms. Vukovic. Okay, so then let's move on to item 1E, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
I will second. Danielle Bailey seconds.
Terrific. Is there any other comment or motion on the agenda? Oh, well,
We're not.
sorry. All right.
Right.
Then I will do a roll call vote, and I'll go from top left. Ms. Bailey
Aye.
and Ms. Krychowiak
Aye.
and Ms. Vukovic
Aye.
and Ms. Seem
Aye.
and Andrew Franklin votes aye. Motion carried. The agenda is approved. We move to item 2A, which is visitor participation. Visitors may speak on a non-agenda item at this time. State law and/or board policy may limit the school board's response. We will also accept comments on agenda items. So if you have something that you would like to say, we will give a moment for you to raise your hand for Karen to track. Okay, and I will start with, and looks like we have a couple hands starting to come up. So I will start with the order they have. Mr. Cronwell.
Hi, Robert Cronwell, 7530 North Applewood Lane. I was noticing that there was something missing from the minutes being approved. It's the December 7th Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. It's just not there. And then when I checked on the website, the actual agenda for that meeting is missing as well.
Mr. Franklin?
I am trying to look here at the, there is no, well, I will take a look, but if there is no curriculum, I'm sorry, you said it was a December 7th Finance and Personnel meeting.
Correct. There were 3 meetings scheduled that day.
Mr. Franklin, if I may, I'll go back into our records and do some checking on that. I appreciate this being brought forward, but let me check and see what we have, and if I need to bring those forward, I will do so.
I would point out that we have, I think it's 45 days from the date of the meeting to put it into minute format. So we will go back and check.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Then the next hand we have up is Carla Pennington Cross.
Hello, everyone. This is the first time I'm seeing my face today, so hopefully I don't look embarrassing. 909 West Acacia Road, Glendale, Wisconsin, 53217. Carla, as usual, I just want to thank everyone on this call who's with the district for your incredible hard work in this tough year. I want to thank our board members for your hard work. I don't think it's possible to express our gratitude enough. I know this has to be just a year that's grinding you down to the bone. And so I just want you to know I am not alone. I know many caregivers and family members and children are just incredibly grateful for the amazing work you're doing. I also wanted, I actually don't know if it's on the agenda. I just wanted to let the board members know that last week at our foundation meeting, we approved a $10,000 grant to the district to cover emergency fund requests. So on the one hand, it's wonderful we had the $10,000 to give. On the other hand, you may have heard from Denise Davis as well. It's it's heartachy that we have need in our district that we're having to fill with emergency funds. But we're going to keep going. We got $5,000 left and we're working on fundraising. I just had a conversation yesterday with Ann Deucer,
Deucer.
who Elliot connected me with, who's with the executive director of Welcome to Glendale. And so we're starting to talk about some sort of joint effort to bring in business support. As she says, our community is full of business who want to give, following our model of living together and giving together. So I hope to be working with her and we're very excited to be pursuing that option. So dear board members, if you have business connections and community connections that you would like to share with me so that we can continue the good work of the foundation in raising money and getting it to families in need, I would love to hear from you. And that is all. Thank you again.
I just have 2 comments to say to Carla. Carla, yes, the gray hair is here. You can see it right here in the camera. And please connect with me in regards to that with the foundation. My district as an alderman has 80% of our district, our businesses in it. So I would be loving to help you with that.
Love it. Let's talk. Thank you, Tamika.
I'm going to use this opportunity, since there are no other hands up here, just to call out Ms. Pennington Cross, because I think that she deserves some recognition. As a member of our school committee, is one of 23 members serving on the state superintendent's parent advisory committee, and that is for 2021, as I understand it. The mission is to foster communication and engagement of families and community members, to help close student achievement gaps, to share information on positive programming resources, and to provide a parent voice to the DPI. And I wanted to call it out because the state sent us out a letter to recognize Ms. Pennington Cross. We are always thrilled with the level of support that our community members and parents give to us, but this, I think, calls for special recognition. So thank you very much, Carla.
You are kind, Andy. I don't deserve it, but I appreciate it. We're all doing our best here. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
A question of order.
Sure.
I don't know if I can do this or not. I have updates from the state convention.
You can-
And I don't know if you want me to do it now or because it's technically not on the agenda, but I can do it within the visitor participation, or how you want me to do that.
I'm fine with you doing it within the context of visitor participation. And please go ahead.
It's kind of simple. We today was the delegate assembly for the WASB. I am the WASB delegate for the Glendale-River Hill School District. Most of the, I'm sorry, I lost my sheet here. Most of the resolutions we had discussed, they passed, and we don't have any issues with 1% sales tax for basically non-personnel, but different things that the school will need. The resolution was there. The special needs waiver definitely was in regards to, and I think we had it wrong, but it was in regards to not losing federal funds because of the pandemic and different emergencies that we have, that the funds would not be pulled away from us if we did not use some of those funds, especially since we were virtual. And so that was one of the resolutions. The other ones were kind of hit and miss. I went out on a limb and I made a resolution or an amendment to a resolution about the funding for SROs and mental health and, a bunch of different, it was like 6 different things. But my resolution took out any kind of language that gave prosecutors information on our kids, or that we would do anything on our reporting of our kids. My argument was, we are educators. We will let the police do their jobs, and we will let the officers do their jobs, and we are educators, and we're here to educate kids, not do the DA's job. So it was it was a interesting fight. And the last other big resolution was Native American mascots. It did not pass at all last year. This year it passed, but the language was you should look into it. It was a mandate to look into changing it, not necessarily changing it, but you should look into changing it. It was a wasted resolution to me because it has no meat and it doesn't do anything. And it barely passed because they feel local control. I believe in local control, but sometimes racism and inequities are perpetrated because of local control. That is all I have. And building and grounds Thursday.
Okay, then. I'm going to give it one more round. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, so I'm going to close without much further ado, very slowly, visitor participation. Okay, and with that, I'm going to move on to item 3. Item 3 is consideration of the consent agenda, item A through M. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Great. Is there a second? Well,
Now is now the time to make a
Yes.
friend. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry.
I would like to make a friendly motion to amend the language in item F to change 2022 to 2023.
Molly, do you accept?
I accept.
And is there a second to the motion as amended?
So moved.
Okay, great. Then in the roll call vote, Tamika Vukovic
Aye.
and Teresa Seem,
Aye.
Molly Krychowiak,
Aye.
Danielle Bailey,
Aye.
and Andrew Franklin votes aye. The motion carries. And items A through M are approved. Item number 4, reports. Reopening updates and data reports from North Shore Health Department.
Mr. Franklin, if may I introduce this topic as we have had in the past. Dr. Kilton has been reporting to us religiously on the data reports from the North Shore Health Department. So if I may call upon Dr. Kilton, if she would continue this tradition of good reporting to the board.
Please.
Great. Here we go. In addition to the typical report tonight with data, I also have some updates regarding the vaccine. So now I have something weird in my, hold on a second. Can people see my screen right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a weird message in front of my screen from the host. I don't know what that's about. Okay, I'll just try to ignore that. All right, our typical 4 criteria for the guidelines for school reopening as usual. The data I'm presenting tonight is from last Friday, January 15th updates. The burden rate in the district is still in the critical range, but it is improving, which is the data I also presented at the policy committee a couple weeks ago. We're making some progress in the right direction. Here's the chart that shows that same burden data in a visual for those that like a visual. This is an exciting trend. We are flattening the trend here. For a while, we were seeing our cases rise. Now we're finally seeing our cases take a flattening trend. Again, this has been 2 reports in a row that we've flattened the trend. Last week we had 33 new cases, so that's also an improvement. I explained this to the policy committee last week or the week before. The North Shore Health Department has now changed the way that they're reporting the positivity rates. So for those of you that have been on the board for a long time, it's kind of like comparing the Ford exam results to the Badger exam and to the WKCE. The numbers aren't going to match the way they normally would. So moving forward, we're going to use the new criteria. They were, some places were counting the number of tests and others counting the number of actual people taking the test. And some of those people would be counted twice if they would test more than once. So the data ended up being elevated. You'll notice we've been trying to get to 5% for a while. As a criteria for meeting in person, and the way that they now calculate it obviously puts us in a little better place. The table on the right shows the percent positivity in the various age groups. I will show a summary of the positivity rates at a later slide. Again, this is the same thing I've been showing over the months now about the COVID-19 dashboard from the Milwaukee County Health Department. Again, as previously reported, this data is improving as well. And the percentages of each of these ICU beds, floor beds, and ventilators in use also improving. So we have been living in the purple in the critical area for a long time now. We are finally starting to move in a direction where we'll get to see different colors and move into some of the reds and yellows. And I coded one pink just because we were right in the middle. Again, additional criteria. We're finally, now that we have a different criteria for the percent positivity, have some sections that we actually get to be in the yellow for positivity rates. So finally, some positives. If you remember recently, this chart has typically been all in the critical stages. We are now in some of our school aged areas. Last times was a little bit better, but we're having some greens and reds on the chart, which for a while was all purple. So also some improvements in that area. This is the summary table that I've been showing all of these months back to September. So the chart at the top shows, you'll notice the burden rate. For a while there, we were in the 1500s and so on. Our burden rate, if we look on the chart on the bottom, is finally down to a more manageable number. And the number of new cases, which like I said, is now, I put it in pink instead of red because it's still not great, but it's much lower than it had been as we were in the 90s and the hundreds up on the table on the top. Our percent positivity rate is finally in a yellow. And again, you can't compare the top chart to the bottom chart because the way they calculated the percentages is now different. But moving forward, we will continue using the data in the bottom chart so that we're comparing equal numbers. So our current data in the district, we have 0 active staff or student cases as of right now today, as far as I know, or as far as the end of the school day was. We have 0 staff on quarantine and we have 2 students on quarantine. Both of those students are not related to one another. They are 2 students with household members that were positive and requiring them to quarantine. This is a similar slide we've been talking about, the number of people working from home due to healthcare or doctor's notes. We have 8 number of staff with childcare reasons on certain days to stay home. Again, this is the same chart as usual. We have none of our teachers or staff members have children in different districts that are on closures requiring them to stay home. So that's a bonus. And we still have 1 staff member on a leave of absence. Daycare updates. Again, today is our lucky day. We have nobody active at Glendale Heights in the school aged program, students or staff. And again, at Milestones, nobody active student or staff at Milestones. So it's good data. What does this mean? This is the slide I showed at the policy committee. Next steps would be to start planning for reopening as our data is improving. which would lead us right into the perfect transition into the next item on the agenda. But before we do that, I do have some vaccination updates. This data is accurate as of today, actually. I had my most recent email from Ann Christensen at the North Shore Health Department when I got home from work this evening. So Ann and I and Ann and all of the other school districts are on almost a daily, if not multiple times daily, email thread regarding updates with vaccines. So on Friday, late afternoon, I was on a Zoom with many of the administrators regarding a different topic, and I was getting emails from Ann at the health department inviting this group of employees to be eligible for the phase 1A vaccination. So with Dr. Moser's permission, I immediately emailed all of these categories, and they were given a link by the North Shore Health Department along with a access code, and were able to begin scheduling themselves for the vaccination. Some of these people on this list here have already gotten their first round this week. Again, it's tricky because there are people I know listening right now that think, you know, why are these people the selected group? This is not a random selection. This is dictated by the North Shore Health Department, and I'll explain that again in my next slide. Basically, those people on this list that filled out the survey would have noticed at the very top, it said, if you are not considered a 1A employee and you take one of these vaccinations, you are, you know, fraudulent in your behavior and that you should not be doing it. So they really are taking it seriously, but they're not trying to exclude people by any means. So these are the people that were selected for the phase 1A vaccination. So we are on the road.
Great.
Now, as of today, this is the information I got today. So basically, the state of Wisconsin has this disaster medical committee that is in charge of who gets the vaccinations and when. So they also have made a subcommittee, which met today, that recommended that K-12, all staff in K-12 and bus drivers be on the included list for the 1B vaccination. That was determined today, and that was forwarded to the disaster board for their final decision and on that recommendation, and that committee meets tomorrow. So when I say I'm getting information like this is hot off the press, this was just released on the news while you guys were in executive session. I was watching the news, and they were repeating the same thing that Ann had told me today via email. Now, to be proactive, the North Shore Health Department is doing a great job. I filled out surveys with the DPI and with the health department. They have asked for the number of staff. They've asked for if our staff would be available during the workday. Would it have to be on weekends? And again, we have, you know, she is on it at the North Shore Health Department. So I have sent all the information with the number of staff, including our food service, custodians, everyone that works inside the buildings, to make sure that when they are ready to go, staff members will get a link to register to go get a vaccination, and we will get this going. And they are hoping to vaccinate thousands of people as soon as they get the approval from the disaster board. Any questions on that? Because that's new information and it's obviously very exciting.
No, that's fantastic news.
Again, if there's questions or discussion, this is all current data from the 15th. Now that the board is aware of this, and as things came out today, we will make sure staff members are aware that the ball is rolling, because I know that people want the vaccination and they're ready to get moving so that they can feel safe and healthy in the buildings. So that's it for the report. If there are no questions, I'll turn it back over to the board.
Shannon, I have
go ahead.
a quick question. When you're reporting on the active cases in quarantine, I imagine that we are, like, so today there's 0, but I imagine that we are tracking that, like, we have a record of the data from whenever we have those active cases in quarantines that we can reference, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
when I was asked to be in charge of these reportings, I created a employee tracking form. And it's just something so we keep track of every student, every staff member, and what their dates are for
Okay.
When they come in close contact or when they test positive, et cetera. So yes, I
Okay.
track it. And then when they fall off the quarantine list, I move them into an archive tab so that I could always go back and look.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you again for all the detail that you're going into and for making the presentation. Just so that you can reiterate it, where is this posted on the website so people can look at the information on our website?
Yep. Immediately following these meetings, I typically send these right to Karen and then she posts it usually within the next day or so.
Okay, so this will be available. Thank you very much.
I think it's on the reopening information page, right? There's the school board presentations is one of the, that's how you would find it.
All right. And I mean, I just, and Karen, I don't know if you can just chime in, if there's a link to ready to post it, if you just want to throw it into chat if you have a moment, that might be helpful. I know that people want to make sure that they know they are. I don't recall offhand. I do see the link to school reopening, but if you could do that, if you have some time during the meeting, I'd be very grateful.
Danielle is correct. That's exactly where to find it. Under the reopening, there's a side tab that says board presentations, and I usually post them by tomorrow.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay. Then with that, if there's nothing else on board, let's move on to the next item here, which is, scroll down here. Oops. My computer is not cooperating with me today. The item 4B, principal's report on the reopening plan.
Mr. Franklin and members of the school board, Dr. Kilton is correct. Her report is a very smooth transition into the reopening plan. Tonight, our three co-chairs are going to make a presentation to you on the progress that's being made. The three co-chairs being Dr. Smith, Ms. Young, and Ms. Umar. And they will talk to you about what they are doing, what has happened, and where they're going. So whoever is taking over first, Mr. Franklin, if it's all right with you, we'll turn it over to the co-chair.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you to the board for allowing us to present this evening on the Glendale-River Hills planning for a safe return to school, our stakeholder input and collaborative planning process.
In December, Dr. Moser appointed Ms. Young, Dr. Smith, and myself, Mrs. Umar, as the school reopening committee chairs. And we wanted to take a moment to thank staff, families, and community members for all of your participation and input thus far. We would also like to encourage you to continue to reach out to us as we engage in the planning process to share your thoughts, your suggestions, and feedback as we continue.
So the reopening committee's belief is that planning for a safe return to school is a collaborative process. So we want to ensure that we're being transparent throughout the process, and we want to ensure that all of our stakeholders have multiple opportunities to actively participate in the reopening process. It's important to note that your voice can provide us with valuable information and valuable feedback. So thank you.
To engage in this process, we began to plan backwards. So in January, we started to take a look at stakeholder input sessions and draft plans and to make revisions based on feedback. In February, we will be presenting at the school board. We will continue to make revisions based on feedback, gather data and intentions, and then begin to preparation for a potential physical return. In March, if our data permits, we would start the reopening process. The goal of planning backwards is to take into consideration the start of the third trimester as it poses a natural break at the beginning of March to welcome students back into the learning process. This does not mean that we were returning in March. The decision to return will be based on data, community input, and other factors. The administrative team and Dr. Moser will make recommendation to the school reopening to the school board to vote on. Our reopening planning workflow is as follows. In the summer of 2020, the school reopening working committees began to do some work around how to return to school in September. In December, our school reopening committee started to do some staff and community presentations about the potential to reopen. We did some staff and community input sessions. And then we also conducted a soft staff and family survey data collection. This evening, we are presenting to the school board and we will be seeking some community input and meetings. We will plan and consult with the North Shore Health Department, and then we will lead into round 2 of our staff and community input sessions that will be starting next week. From that point, we will begin to collect some firm staff and family survey data. We will again consult with the North Shore Health Department as we begin to finalize plans. And then in February, during the curriculum committee school board meeting, we will present a reopening plan and presentation and allow for community input. In February, our proposal or a recommendation would go to Dr. Mosier, who would then take that to the school board.
The Reopening Planning Committee has taken some proactive steps to help us in the planning process. We've attended other district school board meetings. We've read through other districts' reopening plans. We visited other districts' learning environments, giving us an opportunity to see what classrooms, hallway transitions, lunchrooms look like. We've also attended seminars on creating safe and healthy recesses. We've talked to fellow teachers and administrators in other districts to hear their valuable perspectives. This information has been beneficial as we look at important factors related to school reopening and the creation of a reopening handbook. Last summer, there were 3 committees that were developed to create a smooth transition into the 2020-21 school year. I'm pleased to announce that these same 3 committee leaders are continuing to facilitate the staff, family, and community input sessions. Ms. Jenica Westfall is the committee leader and facilitator overseeing the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Dr. Shannon Kilton is the committee leader and facilitator overseeing the Social Emotional Committee. And Mr. Jim Beckman is the committee leader and facilitator overseeing the Health and Safety Committee. When reflecting on developing a reopening plan, we needed a framework. So we posed the following guiding question to help us in our thought process, as well as in our interactions with others and within our community input sessions. If the Glendale-River Hills School District were to reopen for in-person learning, what considerations would need to be made? While also keeping our commitment to families that we would honor a virtual learning model option for the 2020-21 school year.
The first round of staff and community input sessions have concluded. These meetings were held virtually on Zoom, and we offered a number of daytime and evening sessions to accommodate the diverse schedules of all of our stakeholders. Time was also intentionally carved out during the workday so that staff had the opportunity to participate during their contractual hours as well. Participants in the community input sessions and staff input sessions had the opportunity to give feedback and share their thoughts in many ways, including verbally, in whole group, but also small group and breakout sessions. You'll also see here on the screen that we used a number of digital tools. You'll see Padlet and dot storming reflected here, giving participants an opportunity also to write their thoughts and share their thoughts in that way as well. This slide represents the attendance and participation for the staff and community input sessions. You'll note that there were 249 participants. I did make a note there that some people are counted more than once. For example, if a parent attended the curriculum meeting and the social emotional meeting, that would count as 2. people. So there's some overlap there. You will notice if you look at the participation for staff and community members that there are higher rates of participation for the Health and Safety Committee, which we thought was an important thing to note. After participating in the staff and community input session, participants also had the opportunity to fill out an exit slip where they were free to express any other thoughts that they might feel were not expressed during that session. So in addition to collecting all of the Padlets, all of the dot storming, all of the notes that we took, we also collected 112 exit slips, which shared some very thoughtful feedback and suggestions and things to consider as well.
Last Friday, during one of our professional development sessions, the staff went into breakout rooms and analyzed the staff and family community input that was received during the listening sessions that occurred on both January 13th and 14th. Together, the staff worked to identify themes that emerged between the staff and the community when reflecting on what matters most to both stakeholder groups. Then, the staff had the opportunity to discuss what implications these themes will have on the reopening planning. At this time, we'd like to share common themes that emerged during our committee input sessions.
Here are some common themes that were shared during the Curriculum and Instruction Committee that was facilitated by our Director of Teaching and Learning. These are some highlights that were shared by both staff and community members, and we wanted to highlight those for you today. You'll notice that all participants want to ensure that when we transition, if we transition, we continue to provide a high quality instructional model for all of our families. Participants were also concerned about the consistency with the transition for families once that occurs. For example, potential change in schedules and student-teacher assignments. Another common theme for both staff and also advocated by families was common planning and collaboration time for staff. All of the stakeholders felt as though that was something that was important because this is a new way of teaching and learning, and wanted to make sure that that was considered when developing a schedule for any proposals. Staff and community members also recognize that more time will need to be spent on systems and routines if students were to return in person. For example, dismissal may take an extra 15 or 20 minutes, and that cuts into some instructional time. And so teachers would need to be prepared to make some changes to pacing guides and also prioritize standards, as health and safety routines may take more time to ensure that everything is being followed. Both groups indicated some concerns about staffing. How will staff be split? Will staff be required to teach virtually and live concurrently? What if the data preferences for these groups do not align? And will we and can we hire teachers and support staff if needed? There was also an interest in incorporating student lessons on safety protocol before and also after a transition would occur, to ensure that our students have some common language and understand the importance of things like social distancing and wearing a mask. There were some questions around allied arts classes and how to safely provide instruction. Also, it would be important to consider other individuals and other services that operate in a similar manner where they see many students or in many classrooms. For example, interventionists, guidance, special education. Both groups also indicated the need to build time into the schedule for some things that we are finding very successful during the virtual learning model. For example, office hours, time that was built in for morning meetings, and other connection times for students. It's an area that people feel strongly about. And there were also concerns expressed about the availability of substitute teachers and the procedures that would need to be put in place, and how we can make sure that classrooms, if we were to go in person, are covered.
The following themes emerged during the Social Emotional Committee input sessions. And the first theme that emerged is that people express the need for a clear reopening plan to be laid out so that people feel more informed and comfortable about returning to school. Also, families and staff members would like a resource that contains talking points for children related to the transition. It's important that necessary safety protocols, it's important to note that necessary safety protocols will change the way that school currently looks, or the way that our students remember school looking in previous years, which will invoke a variety of feelings for everyone. Also, children need the opportunity to socialize in addition to continuing academic learning. There were concerns expressed around everyone's health and safety when it comes to reopening schools. We also want to ensure we continue to address the social emotional learning needs of students through classroom activities, social stories, one-on-one small and whole group check-ins, classroom and morning meetings. And finally, people question if there are going to be enough support staff, such as therapists, guidance counselors, social workers, etc., to be able to meet the collective trauma experienced due to the pandemic.
There were many common themes that were posed around the inherent health and safety risk of bringing students back into the building. We categorized those risks within some of the mitigation strategies that would need to take place. There was concerns around social distancing and how to impactfully transition students in entry, exit, using restrooms, class to classes, and lunch periods. Also, common themes that occurred were classrooms, in particular class size and seating charts in order to keep students safe. Limiting the sharing of materials throughout the delivery of the curriculum, and also masking, making sure that masks are properly worn and fitted by students and staff, protocols for taking a break from masks, and accommodating eating and drinking. Health protocols that were brought into consideration were daily screening of students and staff before the start of the school day, sick policies for staff and students to ensure that they are not reporting to school or being left at school if they are displaying signs of illness, having a designated isolation room, being sure that we have the staffing and the capacity to do contact tracing within the school environment, the potential for vaccination for staff and students, and assuring that PPE would be supplied for staff to ensure their health and safety in working with our students. In the area of cleaning and disinfecting, having robust cleaning schedules that are predictable and making sure that the responsibilities of staff, students, and custodial staff within those cleaning routines are clearly identified and people are held accountable for those actions. Another key area that came up was ventilation and ensuring that we had fresh air cycles within the building so that aerosols would be minimized and the risk of COVID-19 would be reduced.
On January 14th, all of the stakeholders, both the staff and families, received a soft survey. The data from this survey helped provide us with a clearer picture and a better understanding of where our staff and families stand. This information will support drafting our district's reopening plan. It's important to note that both our staff and families will have a second opportunity to complete a firm survey, which will be distributed after the plan for reopening is drafted, so that stakeholders can make informed selections while answering questions on the survey. We also want to ensure that every family and staff member is included. Therefore, anyone who misses the opportunity to complete a survey will receive a phone call, allowing us to be able to receive valuable input from everyone.
In our family survey results, we had 515 respondents. And we looked at the fact that there are some distinct preferences within these responses by grade level, but we are here giving you an overall piece. And also per our equity non-negotiable, all of our data is disaggregated by race so that survey respondents' racial demographics are mostly proportional to our school community. There is a slight overrepresentation by respondents who identify as white in the data. And there is also a proportional representation in the responses between the learning model selections of families who are white and families of color. 46.8% of the families responding to the survey demonstrated a preference for in-person learning 4 to 5 days a week. 27.4% were interested in a virtual only option. 23.5% selected preference around a hybrid, which would be a 2 to 3 day a week in person and 2 to 3 week virtual model. And 2.3 of our respondents added an additional option within there, many of them including things like they would want more details in before they would make a selection. Our staff survey result yielded 95 respondents. Per our equity non-negotiable, these demographics were also broken down by race and showed that they were fairly proportional to our school community makeup of staff. It is noted, though, that there is a higher representation of staff of color selecting a preference for a hybrid model, and a higher representation of staff who identify as white selecting a virtual only learning model. Both groups had proportional selection of the in-person learning model. 41.1% of staff indicated a preference for virtual only learning. 30.5% indicated a preference for in-person 4 to 5 days a week, and 28.4% of staff surveyed selected a hybrid 2 to 3 days a week and an in-person 2 to 3 days a week model.
So using the information that was collected in all of our various input sessions, the soft data collection, and other forms of feedback, the building administrators and the district team have already been to work. So both building administrators have conducted walkthroughs of the buildings where we are planning different systems and routines based on the feedback and the advice of community and staff members regarding what's important. Also considering CDC recommendations, our current building layout and resources, and other information that we have from local districts and local plans. You'll see here that we are very detailed in our planning. This is a photo that I captured in the boys' bathroom of Dr. Smith and Mr. Beckman, and they were discussing the urinal protocol and reducing the capacity there in the boys' bathroom, roping off alternative fixtures. And so from the classroom to the bathroom, we are taking a very detailed approach to our planning and really walking through all of the different pieces of the day where students and staff members interact, where students and staff members have the opportunity to congregate and really thinking about what practices need to be followed in order to ensure that everybody is safe. Staff members at each school on Friday will actually have the opportunity to collaborate with administrators and give feedback on school systems and routine plans. And the community will also have the opportunity to give that feedback next week as well during our next round of community input sessions.
In order to continue getting feedback from families, once our staff has had the opportunity to collaborate with administrators on school safety protocols, we will be looking at drafting kind of a more detailed plan of what schooling might look like. It is important to us to make sure that we have community input on this. On Wednesday, January 27th, we will be holding again 6 sessions for having community input. 3 during the day and 3 in the evening. And those committees will meet around social emotional needs, curriculum and instruction needs, and health and safety needs. We invite everyone to join, and we look forward to gathering more input from families. Last week, we held the following staff input sessions: social emotional committee, teaching and learning committee, and the health and safety committee, and met with the North Shore Health Department. Today, we have our school board meeting and some opportunity for some community voice. Next week, we will begin round 2 of our community input sessions. And as you can see below, the times and the date of Wednesday, January 27th are listed here. Once this information is gathered, we will go back again and work to refine a more finalized proposal.
As we conclude this evening's presentation, we'd like to ask the board's permission to open it up to the community for additional questions and/or feedback.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I'm sure that the board has questions and we might have some follow-up, but I think that there might have been a couple of hands that flickered on there, and it's a big issue, so I would absolutely do that, providing that everyone limits to 3 minutes once we get to that point, and I'll just go over those rules again, but we try to keep our comments 3 minutes if possible, but I will open it up so people do have specific questions. I think that's important to do at this point. I do have a couple.
I'll keep track when we start to.
Sure. I did want to start off by asking a couple questions. What schools have we been in consultation with that have been open?
So I had the opportunity to actually go in person to Mapledale Indian Hills School District.
Mhm.
I also had the opportunity to talk to administrative staff as well as teachers in the Wauwatosa and Shorewood and Whitefish Bay school districts. And then also I had the opportunity to attend Nicolet's reopening school board meeting as well.
Not Fox Point Bayside, though?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to.
I was just curious.
If I could chime in, I have had the opportunity to speak with administration at Fox Point.
Okay.
In addition to that, I've also been in contact with administrators within the Waukesha School District, the Menominee Falls School District, and the Greendale School District.
One question that we have that I want to make sure that we gauge on, and look, I think that there's this, perhaps it's a false idea of falling behind in general, that the world has kept going on and everyone on the planet just kind of stopped. I don't think that's true, but I do think that there is concern that being in a virtual environment, which we know isn't an ideal environment, that between our school and let's say another school, people are just learning more or learning better. And I'm wondering if you have any, and I think it's relevant because it's relevant to making things up after people return, or what that model looks like, or whether or not we should even, reopen. But my question for you is, do we have a sense of whether or not we are in fact keeping up with the Joneses, on education? Are we, and by our own yardstick, have we been keeping up on our own curriculum?
Right. If I could take on that question, I believe that we would have some ability to measure growth this year based on some of the internal assessments that we're doing. In terms of us comparing ourselves to other districts and their metrics, that would be, I guess, there's not a direct comparison because we're talking about children and different contexts and different environments and potentially different curriculum and different methods of delivery. So I don't know that there's a way to correlate some direct comparisons with another district, but I do believe we can look at whether our own students are growing in our own models through our own measures and assessments, and we can look at that growth in a more objective way through our STAR testing, which would give us some national percentiles to look at and see whether or not our students are making typical growth in a year based on large sample sizes, or whether or not they're making atypical growth this year based on large sample sizes.
Okay. And do we have any indication so far? I know that we did STAR testing in fall. Are we on track? Just generally within our own district.
Right. The STAR test, if I believe, would be administered in spring as the next measure. Because typically what you want to look at is a full year's growth. So you'd want to look at a full year's growth to 1 year to the next to determine whether or not there's been a dip.
Okay. And Danielle?
Tamika was first.
I also have and I don't know which one of you, if one of you would answer this. I believe that there is a kind of a false narrative when it comes to in the same realm as Andy saying that, these kids are falling behind, but also that everybody thrives or no one thrives exactly in virtual compared to not. And I have had some parents who, we've been getting emails and stuff for both ways, but I think it is important to talk about the kids who had harder times or emotional times where they were bullied or they have anxiety about being around people, but now they're thriving in virtual. But there's also people who don't do as well virtually and they thrive in school, in face to face. So I think that has to, as we decide what we're doing or making decisions what we're doing, just collectively, this board has to decide, the 5 of us have to decide on not just your children, but the staff, the bus drivers, even the support staff. We have make decisions on all of that, not collectively, just 1 or 2 kids or different kids. It's over 1,000 people. We are going to have to make a decision. And I just really would like to make sure that as we go through this, that there's pros and cons to every single plan we are going to put you side on. But I really want you to talk about, if you could, that there's a catch-22 in virtual and in person at this time.
Yes, and we actually spent quite a bit of time in our community input sessions talking about the benefits and the positives of the virtual learning model and things that families as well as staff members have observed with students. There were quite a bit of comments that noted students' independence and the increase in their independence and the ability to do things that, at that age level, perhaps, families or even staff members didn't think were possible because, children had the opportunity to be in charge of managing. The increase in technology skills was something that was noted quite extensively. The ability to create slideshow presentations and Excel sheets and things like that. We've also received, like you noted, some compelling feedback from families of children who do better virtually and who have thrived and skyrocketed virtually as well. So there is a pocket of all of our community recognizes that there are benefits to the virtual learning environment, and there is a pocket of our population that want to continue exploring it, possibly even beyond 2020 2021. There are benefits and drawbacks to a transition, and I think every single opinion is valid. I completely understand every single argument, and it's a complicated work, right? If we consider moving in person, or sort of doing some sort of blended model, there's going to be a change in our systems, and that's going to affect every single family, right? There's the possibility that your child could be reassigned to a different teacher regardless of if you stay virtual or go in person, and that creates a whole nother set of issues, right? And so there is a lot to think about, and there are definitely benefits to a virtual model. But I really want to enforce every single argument, every single point that is made is a valid point. And so there's a lot to consider.
And that's the only thing I wanted to kind of emphasize, that there's no right or wrong answer. Somebody's going to be mad about whatever we choose, but as I'm talking to the people that are at this meeting, trust us, you see the gray hair, you can see it on Zoom right here, that I really, and I know my colleagues on the board are really stressing out about these decisions that we're making. We're not taking them lightly, and we are trying to make sure that we get all information possible to make the most educated decision we can.
Ms. Bailey?
Yeah, so I think this is a good follow-up, and I'm gonna say the word data again, which I keep saying in all of our meetings, right? But I guess I want to understand. I'm glad we are observing and talking to other districts and getting that experience. But there are data, there's reports about schools who have been open all over, about risk, about transmission, about best practices. And I want to confirm that that will sort of be part of this recommendation, whatever it is, and understand who is sort of responsible for gathering, reviewing, processing, applying that information. And then I think this point's tied. I'm glad we are talking to the North Shore Health Department and consulting. My concern is that they will consult, I don't know, but they will not make recommendations. And other districts, are getting recommendations from experts in public health in these fields. And so I just want to sort of reiterate that again, not to prolong a process or anything, but to kind of better understand how we are making these decisions and sort of, I think does that make sense? My concern is the North Shore Health Department will not go far enough in really giving us that kind of advice we would need in some of this implementation, going beyond anecdotal and observations of other districts. So if you guys could speak to that a little bit, I would.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, there's some key research out there that I've been looking at and we've been looking at as a team in terms of thinking about some of the CDC guidelines around childcare, schools, and youth programming, as well as information from the Mayo Clinic. Harvard's Path to Zero in Schools is another key document that we've been taking a look at.
Okay.
As well as some information from the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Research Center. So in taking a look at some of those things, I think really what it boils down to, and I think why I think public health officials in the North Shore Health Department would be in a position of not being able to make a strong recommendation, is that there is inherent risk with us returning to in-person learning. And if we look at the like a degree or a scaled level of risk, our lowest risk is going to be in a virtual model. We start to increase that level of risk when we start moving students back into school with staff. And so really it's going to be about, as decision makers in this process, it's about your tolerance for risk. I don't know that there's necessarily a magic number or data point that we can look at to say, well, this is safe and this isn't, right? There's a tolerance for risk that people are going to have to find and reconcile in part of this decision-making process. And to me, where I see this kind of going back to Tamika's point is that we're in a position where no matter what decision is made, people are going to have to internally deal with an emotional sense of whether that is too little risk or too much risk for them, right? And there is not going to be a way to satiate that and have a definitive answer, because it's going to operate for many of us on a very personal level.
And I agree. I guess I just want to make sure that I think that we can understand the risk in terms of data based on certain models or practices, right? So I just want to make sure we are being transparent and as clear as we can be about whatever decision we make, what that level of risk is, right? To staff, to students, to community. So I appreciate your answer.
So one of the things that we would be doing, as you saw is starting to walk through and look at those various areas of our building, is where, based on those guidelines around mitigating risk, can we do that fully, partially, or not at all, right?
Okay.
So that families are very clear about, these are the areas of which our school day, we can assure that we can adhere to guidelines that will keep your children safe. These are areas of the school day in which that is not going to be possible for us because of the design of the building or numbers or whatever, right?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Do we have any medical staff that's actually on the committees though? Any doctors or any nurses or any public health experts that are contributing to the committee process?
Our district nurse, Lori Kindred, joined the health and safety community input sessions, as well as our health secretaries. And so we also have several parents who indicated that they were medical professionals during the committees as well, which range from nurses to doctors to other medical professionals.
Okay, so we do have people who in the community who are doctors who are contributing to this. Okay, great.
We also had a few families who were not able to attend the input session reach out and mentioned that they would offer their input and support. And so we did have the opportunity to send over those dot storming, Padlet, and have conversations with those folks as well who could not attend.
I think you make a good point too, that this is about weighing how much, risk to take. I think that it's a challenge because we have science and we have to follow science, but science tells us different things, and we have to prioritize what happens. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who recognize science, who are ardent mask wearers, who believe in social distancing and in getting through this in a safe and secure way. But nonetheless, as things go on, they realize that whether it's mental health or socialization or something else, that as time goes on, there's a greater interest in getting people reconnected than there was in the beginning of the pandemic. Although I think that is a question of risk, and it's leaving it to other people or to individuals is also something important to empower individual families to decide what's right for their kids, and perhaps having an option, which we talked about at the last meeting, one way or the other, so that people actually have a choice for what's best for their kids. I guess the only other question that I have for the moment is with respect to the kids who are in school or who are maybe kind of higher at-risk students. We have special ed students. We've always made it clear from the beginning that we wanted to have at-risk people who needed in-person contact, that we wanted to make sure that they were receiving the contact that's necessary. And since we're talking about a little bit of a delay between getting this started, if we're talking March 8th, that's the beginning of the third trimester. So what I want to make sure that I hear is that, in fact, when it comes to the needs of students who are at risk, special education, IEP type students, that we've identified them, we're reaching out to them, and that where we've identified other needs, we've been able to A, identify those needs, and B, provide services, that go beyond the computer monitor. So if you could just speak to that briefly. Are we getting the people that we need to? Are they getting the services that they need to? Are we identifying people who need it? Are more parents coming to us and asking for services?
So to address your question, Mr. Franklin, yes, students with current IEPs do have the opportunity to have some in-person learning, also some in-person therapies such as speech and language, perhaps it's occupational or physical therapies. Those, they do have, our special education teachers have wonderful relationships and rapports with the students that are on their caseload, and are in frequent communication with those families and able to accommodate for their needs. It also, perhaps we had some students at the beginning of the school year that perhaps felt uncomfortable coming in person, but now would like to come in person. The staff is very open to being able to continue to accommodate to ensure that the students' needs are being met. I would also like to, and this does not directly relate to the question that you just asked, but I do want to let everyone who's on the call know that I want to thank all of the family members and community members who have reached out to all of us as administrators, offering support during the reopening process. We have a number of families who are educators. And they continuously reach out to us to offer support and to talk about their experiences that they've encountered within their school districts. And so that's been really nice to hear and to learn from. Oftentimes people will bring things to our attention that we have not thought about. So I want to thank everyone for their support and their input. I also want to let everyone know that we are continuing our partnership with both Nicolay, Fox Point Bayside, and Mapledale Indian Hill. And tomorrow we actually have a partnership meeting. in which members from student services, administrators, directors of pupil services, and curriculum and instruction directors and coordinators are all in attendance. And so, Andy, earlier you had asked the question about conversing with Fox Point Bayside, and although I have not yet, tomorrow we do have the opportunity to go into breakout sessions and to be able to ask questions and to be able to learn from fellow districts as well. But I do think it is important to note that our district is unique, and there are so many considerations that we need to make that really solely focus just on our district and the families and staff and students within our district.
I think that's a great point. I didn't mean to imply anything by the question. So if for some reason you took any inference from that, it was absolutely not my intention, because I know how hard you guys are working, and I really appreciate the quality of and the depth of the work that you brought to us today. So, does anyone else from the board have a comment or question? Because if not, we have some hands up.
I just real briefly, because I know everyone has been commenting, but for people who are advocating for kids to come back, students to come back in person, what you see here, this presentation that probably took hours, is just the tip of the iceberg of the work that is happening behind the scenes with every person in our school district right now. Every single person in our school district is working to make a plan for our staff and our students to come back safely into the building. And it is not a small task. And in fact, it's quite Herculean. So I just want to acknowledge the hard work that everyone is doing right now to prepare for this. It's a lot. So thank you very much to everyone for what you're doing to make this plan come to fruition.
Thank you very much for saying that. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, without any other hands up from the board, I'm going to go to our list in order of the hand raised that I see. Our first hand, which has been patient, is Haley Powell. Ms. Powell.
Okay, hello. I've never participated before. Do I need to tell you my address?
If you would, just give us your name and your address, and then feel free to make your comments.
Sure, it's Haley Powell, 2003 West Marne Avenue. And I just wanted to say, obviously, we, as a parent, I recognize that whenever we do return to school, whether it's in hybrid model or fully in person, I acknowledge that it's going to take a lot of adjusting. And so I think that as parents and families, we're going to have to kind of work through that all individually. So I can appreciate that everybody's really concerned about that. But I think that we've been doing this since March, and the return plan has been since August. And the main concern and issue has always been the data, and the numbers were too high or not safe for us. And when I saw the percent positivity based on other jurisdictions, I mean, Glendale's numbers are the best that they're going to be. I mean, I just hope everybody recognizes that 5.6% is great. And I just can't understand how Bayside is at 17.6, Brown Deer's at 12%, and so on. And a lot of these schools have been operating either at hybrid or full capacity for some months now. So I think I know that we're planning on going back in person, but I just feel like if we're looking at just data, couldn't we already be there at some hybrid model, whether it's just 4K or K5 or some of those smaller grade levels, just to kind of get it going a little sooner?
Well, and I think that the principals would have to address that. We started this process by utilizing a handbook. We didn't expect the numbers to stay as high as consistently as they did, and I know that they've been doing a lot of work. Dr. Moser, I don't know if you want to chime in on that question about why we can't simply open it up now, but I do think that from my perspective, it is important to prioritize those who are in need. But it's also important to understand a lot of other issues, including staffing and willingness to go back. And it's a bit of a moving target, as well as, again, identifying people who are in need. and prioritizing them. So, Dr. Moser, if you had anything to add.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I do want to say the data is important that we look at it, but it is not all we need to look at. And it is nice that other school districts may have some numbers. And I do appreciate that too. And as you heard in our presentation, that we look to these other districts on the experiences they've had. But we've been very, I'll speak for myself and many parents that I talk to and many of our staff members. We want to make a decision that is the right decision. We don't want to do an on again, off again situation where we're on for 2 days or for a week, and then we find that we need to go virtual and switch back and forth. Consistency is important, and it would be my intent that when the board makes a decision and we make a recommendation, that's what we're going to do. Families need consistency. Parents, in order to adjust their lives, and students and adjusting their lives need to have consistency. And so we're trying to get our timing best. And I do think it's important that we take a look at the professionalism of our staff and the needs that they are presenting to us. So the data is important. It's very important. We have a crisis in Wisconsin and in the nation. We can't take lightly the potential for disaster. The vaccine hasn't come yet. We're looking for the money that is going to come from the stimulus bill that from the former President Trump that's to come to the schools. And I do expect, you heard in the planning, there are going to be requests for hiring staff, for construction changes in the schools. That's going to take money. And that's money that our regular budget doesn't have. And so I think that we are doing this right in considering many facets, but not just data. I'm not denying that data is important at all. And I appreciate all the work that Dr. Kilton has done and the North Shore Health Department. The vaccine is something that is extremely important to our faculty and our staff in coming back. But I like the planning that's being done. Being systematic in any endeavor, but especially in the reopening of school, is critical. And our parents and our staff have been fabulous. With the 3 co-chairs have been marvelous. So I encourage us to continue on our path. We're doing it right. We're learning so that we don't have to go back and do things over again. So I'm starting to be redundant, President Franklin, but it is not just data. And I'm pleased, I'm impressed by the path that our community has taken in this extremely difficult measure.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next person is Justin Rodriguez. And again, if you could take your name and your address.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, board members. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I also want to say that I appreciate all of the work that's been put in by staff to prepare for the reopening. I do also want to say that the planning effort has been going on for numerous months and coming up on almost a year. And there continues to be an increased number of schools that are going to be providing an in-person option to most students. These districts include the surrounding districts of Brown Deer, Shorewood, Fox Bay, and Mapledale. I know that the administration has tried to do some in-person for students that have IEPs, and I think that is good, but not every person who has a need also has an IEP. I want to encourage the board to reopen in January or February and not wait until March to provide some sort of option for students and families who are willing to take the risk, knowing that the known risks that we have for continuing to do virtual school, we believe are causing harm to the students. Again, I want to appreciate or say thank you to the board for their time, but I also want to encourage a reopening that's sooner than the proposed timeline, which is in March.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Hold on a minute. There is just as some of the things that I hear, maybe one of those answers or questions, and maybe I'm out of line, but one of the reasons why I think we are considering March is because we're in a trimester and it would not interfere in the middle of the trimester. If we had semesters, I guess I would understand more so, but that is, I mean, Justin, at least as far as I understood, that is one of the reasons why we were looking at March, because the last trimester ends March 8th. It's not because we think we will be all done. It's because we don't want to start in the middle of our semesters with the consistency that we have coming into the middle of the semester and then trying to figure out everything, where we want to start fresh at the semester. And am I correct in that? And please correct me if I am wrong.
Board Member Vukovic, members of the school board, and Mr. Rodriguez. Board Member Vukovic is correct. I would never say she's wrong, but she is correct in this particular case. So that is a weighing factor in our planning of the timing. So thank you for adding that to the discussion.
Thank you, board members, and thank you, Superintendent. I forgot to add my address. So Justin Rodriguez, 5742 North Sunset Lane. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, our next person is Sam Holmes.
Hi, this is Sam Holmes, 839 West Glendale Avenue. Just a few comments for you guys this evening. I've taken part in this process in another district since last summer, as well as being a part of one of our committees in Glendale. I want to just make a note and really provide some perspective to parents as well, other parents, that there's so much more work behind the scenes operationally than a lot of people understand. This does take time, and the data is going to show us that it might be safer, but if we're not prepared operationally, or if we don't have the staff members in place that we need to support the plan, our students aren't going to be getting the best that way either. And as far as teachers are concerned, our instructional model is going to be very burdensome to teachers if we try to do the hybrid setting. I feel personally that we may as well seek to do a 5-day in-person model with concurrent learning for virtual students or folks who are in quarantine. That's probably going to be less burdensome on the teachers, because if we look to try to do a hybrid setting first and move into a 5-person setting, teachers are going to have an intense burden of, teaching virtually now, learning the hybrid setting, and then going into an in-person instructional model. That's just a big burden for teachers. And with that being said as well, I noticed in the in the staff survey responses, it looks like a large number of them still prefer virtual learning right now. So it's really important to consider the physical and mental well-being and the psychological safety of our staff and faculty. And so that's just the comments I have. I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I also understand the trimester change being a really important factor in this. My last bit of comment would be that I think K-5 is the route to go first, with secondary after that, unless we feel that based on the data, we can do K-12 or K through 8 all at once. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Okay, our next person is Lisa Warner, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Oh, you're on mute, or we're not hearing you.
You're not hearing me?
There we go. Now we hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Lisa Warner, 800 West Clover Nook Lane, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I have two things. I'll try to go fast. I believe it was Assistant Principal Umar or Principal Young who were presenting the feedback on the family and staff surveys. And there seemed to be, to me, a higher than expected rate for staff saying that they would rather see, they would rather have the virtual learning. So there was a higher percentage, I think it was 44%. And I wonder if there's any insight or information that we have on what drove that decisions among that much of the staff.
We have received quite a bit of feedback from staff in many ways, including the input sessions. There is a lot of anxiety around safety and health. A lot of our staff would feel more comfortable once the vaccine is available as well. So that's a big piece of the consideration. And I'm glad to see that we are making some progress with that. And there's been some recent developments. There are a number of reasons, and I think everybody has different reasons, but that was one of the primary ones that came out.
Thank you. The vaccination, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that. My second question was around the timing of going back to in-person if we can even meet the criteria. So we chose the timing of right after spring break, so coming back in March if possible. And has there been a risk analysis done to weigh the risk in waiting until that date and the benefits that we get with that against the negative implications of continuing to wait if we were already ready? And I say this knowing I don't think that what's the word I'm looking for? The infrastructure of our schools is yet ready. So we need that time anyway. But I didn't know if we looked at both sides of that story and the risk that we have to waiting if we could go in person. Does that make sense?
Does anyone want to take that?
If I could just ask a clarifying class, can you explain to me when you talk about the risk in waiting, are you talking about the risk in not having students return immediately because of the positioning of spring break and then the potential for rates to rise after spring break? Is that what you're referring to, or?
No, I was just, there's risk in everything, right? There's risk to both sides. And if we looked at both sides and felt that the risk in waiting until we come back from spring break is less. That's what I was trying to get at.
Oh, it would be the return. The return in March would likely come prior because the spring break for our district comes at the end of March, right? So like looking at that planning tool. So I think the thinking on waiting is, you would have a natural break where you could shift some of the curricular delivery because you wouldn't be interrupting the learning during that time. I think another area of teacher concern is the interruption to the continuity of learning because learning will be impacted when we move to an in-person model for those students who remain virtual, because once we shift that model, we're going to have to restaff in many ways. And so there could be some alterations that happen there. So I think, in the trajectory of learning from that risk aspect, I get concerned about some of the fall that will come with having to re-enter kids, shift models, shift teachers, shift knowledge of students. So from that end of things, I think that's our consideration in looking at a learning model. If we're weighing out the social emotional benefits, I don't know that we have a mechanism to look at whether or not that risk is more prevalent by waiting or not waiting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more hand that's up, is Streeta Cowgers. There's some
Is
sound.
anybody else? I
Yeah,
don't
so-
hear her. She's having some sound difficulties right now.
Yeah,
Sounds like a chipmunk or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's see. Is
you want-
there any way you can like text
Maybe.
one of us your question or something?
maybe keep your video off. Sometimes audio is better without video.
Go ahead. Is she trying?
yeah, her mute is off.
Or maybe you can put your question in the
We don't have
chat,
that.
but doesn't the chat go to Karen?
I do see chat, Andy, actually.
Really?
But
Yeah.
I think it goes to Karen, maybe.
No, I see it to
I
everyone.
have also received some direct messages. So if you send a message to me, I can read it out loud as well.
Well, we need to fix that for sure because that's not, let's make sure,
Okay.
hopefully we can fix that.
Yeah.
It's
Now
not
she's
us. It
typing.
might be her computer or her Wi-Fi. It may not be us.
Yeah, why don't we have some time here.
She
It's
said
not-
I will type it.
I see that
Well,
now.
maybe while she's typing, you can go to
Go to
Corey.
this one, Mr. Stofflet. I hope I pronounced that right. Corey Stofflet.
Yep, Mrs.
Oh, hello. If
Hi.
you could give us your address as well.
Yep, I'm 815 West Glendale-River Road. I just have a real quick question on the, you talked about continuing the virtual model in addition to the in-person learning. Is that just for this year? Or, and is that for, can you just talk a little bit why behind that, just continue, just to kind of ease through the rest of the school year? And then I assume next year when we're, if we're, quote unquote, back to normal, that virtual model will no longer be an option. Is that right?
We made the promise to families during our decision making in the summer that there would be a virtual learning model that would be offered for the duration of the school year. And we want to make sure to honor that. In regards to conversations about continuing virtual learning, that's something that the district administrative team and the board would have to discuss. Right now, the plan is for the duration of this year to fulfill that promise that was made to families last summer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yep, that makes sense. I heard it was a little bit of a challenge to kind of mesh the two once in-person learning comes back, and I just wasn't sure what the reason behind that was, but the promise going forward makes sense. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have Ms. Cowgers raising her hand again.
I switched
Hey.
computers. Okay, sorry
Wonderful.
about that.
No problem.
Okay, 7007 North Braeburn Lane. I'm curious about the differences between the two schools. So you mentioned that there were differences in family preferences between the middle school and the elementary school. I'm wondering if there were differences in staff preferences and whether there would be a consideration for having different plans at the two schools, although I know that that would be potentially crazy too.
So if I can respond to that, we did not, the data between the two schools was not reflected in what we presented tonight, but we did have an opportunity to look at that and pull it out. One of the things that we found is it's very sporadic. There isn't a lower upper preference, right? It's sporadic from grade level to grade level, and that pattern is also true in our staff. So we have some grade levels of staff who want to fully return in person. We have some grade levels of staff who want to remain virtual, right? And so when we think about those components, there's not a clear matchup. In fact, it might be easier to lead to a decision if there was, but there is not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that is all of our visitor participation. And so with that said, I will slowly go back to our agenda and move to the next item, which is item, unless there's any, Ms.
Tamika, did you
Bukovic
raise
has raised her hand to participate. It appears to have been in error. So I will go and move to item number 4C, which is the 2020 auditor's report.
Thank you, President Franklin. Members of the school board. This particular item was on the Personnel and Finance Committee's agenda. They have referred it to the full board. When we started tonight at 6:30, our consulting business administrator, Mike Weaver, was with us. I don't know if Mike is still with us now at 8:10.
He's still on.
Is he on? Good. Okay. I have discussed the 20 our audit, and Mr. Weaver is prepared to talk with the school board this evening about our audit for the past school year. So President Franklin, with your permission, if I may call upon Mr. Weaver to update us on our financial, some financial matters that are attached to the audit. Mr. Weaver.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and great discussion before I got to take place. So you guys are well on your way on getting back into school. As far as the audit, so it was included in your packet. It's a very long document. Key pieces are really, it's like a report card for the business office and for the school district as far as financials. There's a letter that was not included in your packet, so I will get that to you. I don't know how. I'll work with Dr. Mosier. But inside that letter, the auditors give a glimpse of what they believe to be true from what they know. So some of that is that there were no significant changes to our accounting policies during the school year of 1920, meaning nothing changed as far as procedures and the way we account for our revenues and expenses. There were no significant difficulties during the audit process, and that's a huge kudos to Rosie, Tracy, Melissa, and everybody in the business office. So they didn't have any concerns with working with the business staff. There were no material misstatements. Material, depending on the size of the district, could be anywhere from a couple $1,000s to $10,000, $12,000. But at the end of the day, nothing significant came up as a misstatement. There were no disagreements with management. And the last one is there was one finding in the audit. That finding is a finding that you will have every single year because you do not produce your own financial statements. The statements are produced on behalf of the audit firm, Feld Schumacher. Almost all districts do not produce their own financial statements. So this is a very common finding. The one positive note is you did have 2 findings in 1819. So you are down to 1 finding in 1920. So that's a positive there. As far as the financials, Dr. Mosier and I will be discussing a little bit to see if there's anything that we are concerned about. Both of us not being part of the district in 1920, we did want to go through that a little bit more just to make sure there's nothing we wanted to point out as far as a concern from our end. But through the eyes or the lens of the auditors, it's looking very good as far as how we're accounting and the practices that we're using. And we're keeping those true as we move forward in 2021. I know that Rosie isn't currently with us and has retired, but we'll keep that up and as we continue to move forward.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again. And if we do have any follow-up questions, we can contact you with those as well.
That as well as the treasurer's report. So if you ever have a question about that, shoot me an email. I'll feel free to answer it. If I feel it's something good for the group, I'll just make sure I'll make a note via email for everyone.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I think we can move on to new business, which is item number 5A. Approve consideration of open enrollment new seat availability for 2021 to 2022.
Thank you, President Franklin and members.
And nothing you said.
What?
Members of the school
Maybe
board.
my thing is off.
The administration made a presentation in front of the policy committee chaired by Ms. Seam on our recommendations for the new seats for the school district under the open enrollment program. And I'm going to be asking Dr. Kilton to make that presentation, but I'd like to update the board on the direction of the policy committee. The policy committee, upon acting and making a recommendation to the full board on the new seats, also wanted us to come back and make policy recommendations concerning open enrollment. Following the policy meeting when the committee took open enrollment under consideration, the panel, the staff panel, which included myself and others, we indicated to the committee that we would come back in February to the policy committee with policy recommendations separate from the number of seats. And that will be happening. I did report that to the committee that we'd be coming back in February with policy, but that will not impact Dr. Kilton's recommendations that she's going to make in a few moments. So Mr. Franklin, with your permission, Dr. Kilton would like to update the full board on the recommendations of the policy committee.
Absolutely.
All right, I believe the worksheet is in the packet that each of you has received, but using the similar procedures we've done in the past with the cohort survival method, it's recommended that the board approve the enrollment projections for 2021, 2022, and 10 enrollment seats in K-5 that would be available. Please note that the projections do take into account that we've lost 35 students due to our learning model that have chose to open enroll to other districts or homeschool during this pandemic, that we are hoping to get back to rejoin the district at the end of the pandemic. So with that, the recommendation is that we approve 10 open enrollment seats in K-5 for the 2021-2022 school year.
Okay, is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? I just want to make sure I understand. So we've been able to tie the loss of enrollment or this drop in enrollment specifically to people open enrolling in other districts due to virtual instruction?
Good question. There were a total of approximately 70 students that have left the district. My administrative assistant pulled the data for each of those students that has left and actually followed up with each of the families to figure out the reasons why. 35 of them have actually relocated or moved to different communities, and therefore that's the reason for their departure. The other 35 that have not returned this year have attended private schools that are local or open enrolled elsewhere. I can't guarantee it was due to the pandemic, but they were students that were here last year that have chosen, and 35 is obviously a large number, to leave in a particular school year. So I think it's more of an assumption, but we are working to recruit them to come back when we do reopen.
Okay, those were actual district students.
Correct.
All right.
Shannon, do you know off the top of your head what our open enrollment was, what the suggested open enrollment number was last year for K-5?
Zero.
It's on the worksheet. I think there
Oh,
was
sorry.
accepted a total of 18 students last year off the top of my head.
I apologize. I
That's all right.
didn't- I
It
missed
may have
that.
been, I can pull it up as well and look at it, but I believe it was
Okay.
maybe 5 in K-5 off the top of my head, but I could look.
Nope.
It was 5.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
wow,
you.
that was a good guess. Okay, yep. Last year we accepted 5 in K-5, 3 in first grade and 10 in second grade, a total of 18 seats. This
Okay.
year, the recommendation is just 10 in K-5, as we do anticipate students that have left returning.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? If not, we have a motion on the table. So I will we have a motion, we have a second, so I'll do roll call vote. Mrs. Sorry, I'm looking at your name. Molly Krajowiak,
Sorry, I.
Danielle Bailey,
Aye.
Tamika Vukovic,
Aye.
and Andrew Franklin votes aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, then our next item on the agenda is item 5B, which is approval of the 2021 to 2022 district calendar.
Thank you, President Franklin, members of the school board. A panel comprised of teachers, specifically members of the Teachers Association, administrators, staff met to finish the work of developing a 21-22 district calendar. That panel made a recommendation to the policy committee, which we did. And the policy committee accepted the calendar with the exception that the principals had asked the panel to look at an issue dealing with parent-teacher conferences. The policy committee directed that we meet with the principals and discuss the issue and come back with a recommendation. We did. The calendar that you have in the packet reflects that change, where the principals' input made a difference. I'm going to ask Dr. Kilton here again to present the calendar. She was part of the panel and can speak to what the final calendar is. And this will be the calendar that we are recommending for the Glendale-River Hills School District with the 21-22 school year.
So Dr. Moser basically said everything I was planning to say regarding the committee. We met 3 times to kind of have a collaborative process around the calendar. So it's recommended that the board approve the 2021-2022 calendar as presented so that we can move it forward to the community.
Okay. Are there any
One more, I'm sorry, Mr. Franklin, one more thing. You'll
Yeah.
notice this calendar that's in your packet or on board docs is also indicates the extended hours that we hold with our staff. We put these on here to help our staff with planning and so that we can plan professional development with staff, and it's on the calendar well in advance. There was a compromise between those in the teaching association members and the administration to make sure that the additional conference hours were also taken into account and removed from the extended hours so that that was a shared compromise between the administrators and the employees.
Okay, then. I appreciate that. Then I just want to make sure, I don't think that there's been a motion made on the calendar yet. So if someone can make that motion. to
So
approve.
moved.
And second?
Second.
Okay, then if there's, is there any discussion? Yeah.
Mr. Franklin, one quick point. The panel did consult with our fellow Nicolay area school districts to see what type of commonality there is between our calendars. And we did do that. And it doesn't mean we're exactly the same, but on areas that would require help for families in the community, I think you'll find that we did cooperate with the other 3 Nicolay area school districts in the development of the calendar.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll, if there's no further discussion, I'll take a vote. Ms. Vukovic,
Aye.
Ms. Bailey,
Aye.
Ms. Krychowiak,
Aye.
Andrew Franklin votes aye, and motion carries. Okay. Our next item is item 5C, approval of Black History Month resolution.
President Franklin and members of the school board, February is Black History Month. And it is Black History Month not only in the community in southeastern Wisconsin and Wisconsin, but it is Black History Month for recognition in the Glendale-River Hills School District. Dr. Smith, Ms. Umar and Ms. Young have a presentation, and then we would like to culminate that with a proposed resolution of recognition of Black History Month within the school district. So principals, with Mr. Franklin's permission, if you make that presentation.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I'd like to begin just by stating that we actually don't have a slideshow that we're going to be sharing with you this evening, but we as an administrative team do believe that Black history is American history and should be embedded across our curriculum all year long. The establishment of Black History Month emphasizes the ongoing need to ensure that history does not exclude the events, perspectives, and contributions of all Americans. This is a catalyst to further our ongoing efforts to create equitable teaching and learning practices. Daily lessons, activities, as well as discussions will be implemented into our classrooms across all grades and all subject areas. This learning will be used to develop a culminating piece to be shared as part of our Black History Live virtual webinar event that will take place on Thursday, February 25th at 6 p.m. for all of our students and families and staff to enjoy.
As Parkway and Glen Hills began our Black History Month planning, it became clear to our building level administrative team that this would be an opportunity for our district to unite around a consistent commitment to understanding and uplifting the contributions of African American culture, intellect, creativity, and perseverance. We look forward to sharing the impact of this partnership during our live webinar event. And thank you for the board for allowing us time to address this very important aspect of our students' learning and their lived experiences.
Mr. Franklin,
Yes.
may I be presumptuous and ask Ms. Bailey if she has a resolution that she'd like to present?
I was going to ask the same question. It's not presumptuous at all. Ms. Bailey,
And by present, you mean?
Read it.
Yes. Oh, read it. Okay, great, sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Newbie here. Yes, and
quite all right.
is it okay if I say something about it, or should I wait for
Please.
discussion?
Please
Okay.
speak about it.
I just wanted to say a little something because it was important to me that our district sort of formally recognize Black History Month because I think that there's power in saying things out loud. And I think that through this resolution, we as a district get to say that we value Black lives. We value the histories of Black people, contributions of Black people to this country, to the world. And while it's not the same thing as taking actions, we are also doing that. And thank you to the administrators for helping to add that part to this resolution for us. But this is our public commitment as a district and a symbol of our willingness to take actions that affirm these values. So I'm proud to be able to present this resolution, and I will read it. All right. Resolution in recognition of Black History Month 2021. Whereas Black History Month encourages society and schools to celebrate the history, contributions, achievements of Black Americans, and whereas this observance permits society to re-examine its role in preserving the civil rights of all citizens, and whereas schools should be places for the practice of equity, for the building of understanding, and for the active engagement of all in creating pathways to freedom and justice for all people, and whereas achievements of Black Americans have benefited all mankind, and whereas Black history is American history, and whereas 1 month is not sufficient to honor all the history, contributions, and achievements of Black people in the United States, and it is important to recognize throughout the school year the contributions of Black people in society and to recognize and address disparities in student outcomes in order to move towards greater equity in our education system and the greater community. Whereas this year, the Glendale-River Hills School District will work to provide resources to expand teacher knowledge around Black history for the purpose of engaging students in thinking critically about those historical events and how they impact the current racial climate in America. To further this work, partnering with local organizations and expanding our resource base will provide rich, contextualized, and authentic learning opportunities for our students. We are committed to intentionally providing our students with rich and robust Afrocentric lessons and activities integrated into the core content areas when recognizing, celebrating, and honoring African Americans' achievements and contributions to the fabric of our society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Glendale-River Hills School District Board of Education proudly recognizes the month of February 2021 as Black History Month, in witness whereof the undersigned, being all members of the Board of Education, have executed this resolution this 20th day of January 2021. So thank you, everyone, for hopefully voting for this.
I just want to say, Danielle, Ms. Bailey, you've done an amazing job on this. It is resonant and it is timely. And I think it's perhaps fortuitous too that we get to do it on today, the inauguration day. So I want to thank you and everyone else for the work that you've done on this and on commemorating and working to commemorate Black History Month next month. And so I don't think that we have an open motion, but does someone want to make the motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Krychowiak,
Aye.
Ms. Vukovic,
I have to think about, no, hi.
Andrew Franklin votes aye, and Ms. Bailey?
Aye.
Wonderful. The motion carries. The resolution is approved. And I look forward to signing it, and everyone else as well will have it circulated to sign. Okay, then I think we're on to item number 6A. Discussion and reporting on selection of a superintendent search firm. And I suppose it's my action item, isn't it? So, Dr. Moser, let me know if you have anything else that you're going to want to add, but I'm really happy to report that things are going very well. I'm very encouraged with the process that is in place right now. A couple of highlights. If you're not aware, tomorrow, well, first of all, we have a survey that's been posted on the website. The survey is designed to have people identify the qualities that they want in a superintendent. As of last Friday, there were 150 responses. 2/3 of that were parents. The survey closes either at the end of tomorrow or the beginning of Friday. So if you haven't done that survey yet, I'd encourage you all to do so. You have an opportunity to talk about what you think is important about this district and to also identify 10 key traits. Tomorrow already is the 21st, and on the 21st and 22nd, we're going to engage in a series of conversations with community members. And Dr. Moser has delineated the community, the various committees and the time. We're we're going to be having conversations with Rain Associates, who are our recruiters, to better discuss not just the process, but the qualities of our administrator, also to give them a better feel for the district and matching someone to our district as well. By the end of the month, we're going to have a live ad, and there's a bunch of different components that go into that. I know that Karen Jamel is working on finalizing a flyer, and that the information that we give, both in surveys and in these community meetings, is going to go toward helping to finalize the flyer and to present an advertisement for recruitment. So it's really important work. Next week on the 27th, we will probably have a meeting as a board to just do a wrap up. We may or may not need it, so that's still pending. But by the end of next week, which I believe is the 29th, or by that Monday, we should have a live ad. And by that point, we will be going into our next phase, which is going to be the sit and wait and see what we catch phase, which we're really looking forward to getting into. So that's my update. Things are going really well. I think that from my perspective, I've had a lot of positive conversations with Rain Associates. Each of our board members met individually with the recruiters, so I think that they're taking a lot of input into account, and I think it's going to be a very deliberate attempt and a very data-based attempt to try to find someone who matches our needs. So I am very happy that things are going well, although the further along the process that it goes, the closer to the end of the year we get. And I just think it's really important at this moment to just, I'm going to call out Dr. Moser, because you know, we're just very happy that he's been here to assume lead and guide us through really a very tough year, but also through this process of recruitment. So thank you. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions. Okay, no questions. Then item 7A, adjournment.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye, motion carries.
I've been wait, just I want to apologize to everybody. I know I look like I've been getting some texts looking like I am dead, but I have literally, this is my 6.5 hour straight on a Zoom call. And I was trying to be a trooper, but I apologize to the people in Glendale that I look like I'm about to die over, but please forgive me. I just wanted to apologize for that. I'm just exhausted off this computer screen right now.
Get some rest.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good evening. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll keep touch on our next schedule.
Thank you. Yep. Good night.